All right, so I'm just gonna say right now, this is gonna be a crazy review of the RPM Q2 foam paddles. So I'm just gonna cover a lot of what is a Q2 foam paddle. I gotta test out a bunch of different paddles. What is it not like, and my comparison with a bunch of the piece of stuff that you guys are familiar with. So if you guys haven't seen the review, or it's not a review from John Q describing the new Q2 paddle, definitely go check that out. Just describe how this paddle was made in collaboration with James Ignatowicz and Marwan. I got him on the channel earlier to talk about some of the new paddles. Hopefully I'll get them back to chat a little bit more. But this is my overall take of how the RPM Q2s play. So I probably have the most time on these paddles just because I got a bunch of them early. I was testing out even one of the early prototypes of the elongated prototype 3, which I know is pretty exciting. That was one of the initial developments of this foam paddle. So let's just jump right into it. So I'll describe the paddle first, and then I'll kind of go into the comparison of the different paddles. So the RPM Q2, it is a foam core paddle known for, I think it's RPM is known for their spin on a lot of their paddle lines. And so the Friction Pro, which came out about less than 6 months ago now, that's been really popular. And now this is their first venture into a foam, which is a little bit different of a feel in terms of a paddle, but actually they made it such that it plays the most similar to their Friction Pro. So I don't know. Sorry, I don't want to drop all these paddles. So this is the Friction Pro. So that's the one that's been really popular, and it's been similar. So what makes the Q2 unique? So inside, it has a 4 foam construction that's made with different sorts of cutouts, but it's different from other paddles. So say you have I'm already jumping into other paddles now. So say there's a True Foam. This is kind of one of the earliest foam paddles that came out that has voids inside of the paddle. So rather than having these like cut out holes to allow for softening, they actually cut these little grooves into them. So the main difference of this paddle is the way that it's constructed. Is that when it's supposed to hit the ball, the paddle's supposed to bend and then release a little bit of energy back into the ball. So some of the paddles that we know for having this really high like diving board effect is the Yola Pro 4s. So this is known to have this kind of like trampoline effect. So this is from a floating foam core. Kind of see it up here where there's foam on the outside and then a honeycomb center, and that kind of springs in the middle and then kind of flexes and then exerts energy back out. The way that the RPM Q2 is different. Oh, actually, let's describe a little bit more of other paddles. So then, say like the Boomstik, the way that this generates the power is there's a completely different foam ring around the outside, and then a solid piece of foam in the center, and that acts like a slingshot trampoline where it bounces the center and then shoots it back out, as opposed to kind of more of a diving board, which hits it and then shoots it out. So why is that then different with the Q2? So the Q2 is different in that it doesn't quite have that same trampoline diving board that other paddles have, which kind of bend either at the neck or bend in the center. Because, like, think about when you're on a trampoline. If you're jumping in the center of the trampoline, you have, like, high power. But then what happens if you jump at the edge of the trampoline? The amount of force that's exerted back on your body, like, lessens the further away you get from the center. So if you hit in the sweet spot with the Boomstik or any of the other recent paddles, like, it has great energy return. But then once you get further to the side of the paddle, you lose that same like exponential like effect on the ball. So what happens if you hit down here? It kind of dies off on other paddles. So the way that the core of the RPM works differently is rather than having a diving board that only moves laterally in this direction, like from the center, they created almost like John Q describes it as like a taco. So I'm trying to think if there's a good analogy. So imagine if like you had like you and your friend had a tarp, and it was like a piece of paper. Let me see if I have a paper that I can use. Oh, sure. I'll use this. So say you had a piece of paper, and like if a trampoline, it usually just like bounces right in the center. So if you had, say, your friend and you're holding this tarp on both sides, and you're like maybe you're throwing something up, it would bend down this way, and then when your friend and you pull on the side, it would like flex into a taco and then release, and then that's how the whatever object or ball would be shot back up. So regardless if you're in the center or if you're in the side here, like this like bend and release would create the same amount of energy going back into the ball. So think about that from the paddle's perspective. So imagine if this is the paddle, and the way it bends is not like a diving board where it bends this way, but it actually flexes like here in like a U shape. That means if you're up here at the top of the paddle or you're down here on the bottom of the paddle, it'll create the same amount of energy. So I think that was one of the qualms that I had with the Yola like Pro 4s, in that when you hit like on the top, it had great power. But then when you hit it further down below, you would lose the power here because it's further away from that sweet spot. So essentially what they did with the Q2 is they created a really stable platform to be able to allow for like not just a large sweet spot, but a paddle in which it generated the same amount of return force or similar amount of return force regardless of where you're at on the paddle. And so for the mass markets, what does that mean? A much more forgiving paddle. Like if you're hitting up here or down here or to the sides, you're still going to have a generally like similar power layout to all of that. So I think the tech is really exciting, whether you're getting the Q2. So they have now two different variants. So before I go into the two variants of the Q2, let me just describe like how does this paddle play compared to a lot of the other popular paddles on the market today. So let's start off with the Boomstik. I know this is the one that's been super popular. A lot of people have it. So the Boomstik, I would say, they both have great pop. So pop is when you're just holding the paddle, the ball's coming at it and just bounces right off. So it has a high amount of pop, and that's great for when you're at the kitchen and you need to block without exerting your own force in the paddle. And so these paddles are great. So what I would say the benefit of each of these paddles. So the RPM Q2 comes in around 7.7, 7.8 ounces, which is significantly lower than the Boomstik, which comes in around 6.2, 6.3, maybe 6.4 for the elongated sometimes. And so that's a significantly higher like static weight, meaning it's going to produce a lot more power, but it's a lot harder to swing that. So I really like the Boomstik. However, it was a tad too heavy for me, right? These MOI weights, it adds like good stability, but the stock weight, I probably would have preferred it around if they had like an 8.0, 8.1. You can customize it, move like your balance point a little bit further down, add more stability here, which I couldn't find that I could do with the Boomstik with the MOI weights. If you like the weight setup exactly like this, the Boomstik is great. But for those who like to tinker their paddles a little bit more, I found it harder to do with the Boomstik. So if you like to play the Boomstik, but want a lighter paddle, yeah, the Q2 has been great for that. What other? So the boomstick has a different sound profile as well. So the boomstick is known for this like boom, like loud, but it's very hollow and has a stiff feeling. So you because of the hollowness, like it bounces like off. Let's see, it has good dwell, but then the it's kind of muted in that way, even because it's a stiff and it's it comes off a little bit fast. So you have to have good hands to control it a little bit. So what else next? Ooh, I'll go with the order of popularity. So the Loco. So the Loco, a lot of people compared it to the Boomstick because they're like it's high power, but it's a different feel profile than the Q2. So I would liken the Loco as having a lot plushier feel. So it's not like super soft where you're hitting a pillow, but like in respect to these other paddles which are very stiff, like this is gonna feel like a lot more dampened, kind of like a pillow hitting through it, but with imagine a pillow with a lot of power, right? So this is great. It has a large sweet spot, but then for a lot of higher level players, they don't like the Loco because you can't feel the ball as much on it because you're just hitting through it and it absorbs the force and then returns it. And this one I would say has a lot higher of a trampoline effect. So that's sinking into the paddle and then shooting back out, which I wouldn't always say is better because sometimes it can be unpredictable in terms of how much force is being returned on the paddle depending on how hard it is. So, I mean, this has been a super popular paddle. I like it. I mean, it comes in different shapes. So with the Q2s, they only come in a elongated and a wide body. The Loco comes in a hybrid as well. So if you need that shape, I think the Q2s will eventually come out in that, but they don't have it right now at the launch. So the Locos, what else is it? The grit on this wears out extremely fast. So that's my one downside of the Loco. The Q2 grit is great. It's lasted pretty well, and it uses the same, if not better, grit than the Friction Pros. So if you ever have hit those, kind of that upgraded grit that it has. And all of their new stuff, because James Nagadowicz is working really closely with this factory in China. He's working with having a really good QC process. So all of these Q2s have really good grit. Okay, so that's the Loco. Another one high up on my list that I really like is the Luzz Inferno. So I would say the sound of the paddle of the Luzz Inferno is somewhat similar to the Q2s. The main difference in the construction and the feel here is that in Inferno, so inside of the Inferno, it's a full floating foam core, but then they use a denser foam called an MPP. So think about like the packaging material that you usually have with normal foam. It has these really large white beads. MPP is like a really like compact, small bead that's kind of more uniform throughout. So that is a lot stiffer. So if you're thinking I don't even know what the exact comparison, but it's kind of a stiffer foam, and so it has a lot stiffer of a feel. So in the profile of foams, I would say the Q2 is kind of in the middle of the spectrum. So if you have a really soft feel, so the Loco is a really soft feel, and then the MPP of the Luzz is kind of a harder feel. The Q2 is right in the middle. Let me just throw in another paddle that people have been using recently. So there's the Aereo Cyclone. This is kind of like the Luzz Inferno, which uses the MPP, but it's way on the really stiff, high power spectrum of pop. So this is kind of on this far end. So I'd kind of liken them around. So this would kind of be the rankings. And then what I really liked about the Inferno originally was that it was really forgiving. So it had great forgiveness and stability everywhere around the paddle. So I felt like this paddle was great. You could look at one of my previous reviews of this. I actually, in the middle of a tournament, I was using a wide body like Friction Pro, and then I was in the finals match, and I actually had to switch to another paddle because I couldn't get the reach on the paddle, and I had lent out my elongated Friction Pro, so I ended up switching to an Inferno and did a whole lot better until I cramped and then ended up losing the last game. But I came back, and I switched over. I really liked the Inferno, but then I just couldn't get in it. So that was a singles match. So, but I couldn't get used to the Inferno as an elongated. So like the Q2 has a lot of qualities that I liked of the Inferno, but they make it in a wide body as well. It has noticeably better grit than the Inferno. This one wears out quite quickly. But in terms of the forgiveness, I felt like the Q2 has that sort of forgiveness that the Luzz Inferno has. Plus a better color scheme with this black and blue versus the nail salon pink here. What else about the Inferno? Yeah, so this is the OG Inferno. Definitely great paddle. But recently the Inferno though, I think one of the problems that it has is they have a poor QC process. I think they ended up switching factories or something else like that. So the more recent Infernos, I felt like I heard a lot of stories about them like delaminating, so like the face comes off of the paddle, and then they have to go through warranty. So that's one of the problems with Inferno. Reminder, the Q2 does have a lifetime warranty now, so that is pretty incredible in terms of just being able to like stand behind the durability of this paddle. I'll do a review later of kind of all the recent paddles that have lifetime warranties. I think they're getting a lot better in that regard, just being able to support their products better. What else we have? Oh, Gatorstrike. So let's see. Gatorstrike is high power, high pop, but it is going to be way on the end of spectrum of power. The Q2 is not like super high end power. It is very strong, like similar to the Friction Pro. If in fact it's a little bit like poppier than the Friction Pro. So if you're trying to compare the two together, the Q2 is going to have more pop than the Friction Pro. And then with that, let me talk about... let me finish the comparison with the Gatorstrike. So Gatorstrike, has good pop forgiveness. It's a lot higher powered. So that's going to be a different feel. This one is very muted. So it has like an EPP, like foam core, but then there's these cutouts in the middle where it has like dampening foam here, which allows for like vibration, like dampening, like right inside the paddle. So it does create these voids here. But it's a lot more muted of a paddle. So you're hitting this like you're hitting a tennis racket. You're not going to feel it as much, but it has great spin and stability and control. So that's the Gatorstrike. Now, back to the Q2. I mean, sorry, before I go back to the Q2, I mean, there's all these other new paddles that I didn't cover. I mean, there's like the Fuse, the Joy, the Mark, I got a Falcolos, Spartus, Vapor, Power 2. I mean, these have upgraded grit. I'm not going to talk about them too much. I'll probably do it for a separate review. But I mean, of the ones that I covered before, I think those have more of a similar like play profile in different regards with the Q2. But now let's go on to, well, what thickness do I get? Most paddles, foam paddles that came out, they have one specific thickness, right? So when the True Foam Genesis came out, they had one thickness, which was a 14 millimeter. When the Boomstik came out, or it only came out in 16 millimeters. When the 008 came out, they went opposite end of the spectrum and they came out with a 13, a 16, and a 10. So historically, when you're talking about the thickness of paddles, the thicker the paddle was, the more plush it played, and it had less pop. So I'll describe that with the Yola Pro 4. So I have two Yola Pro 4 Agassiz here. So if you're going to take a traditional honeycomb paddle, which is a Gen 3, like you have a thicker paddle. So this is the 16 here. This one's going to have like a softer feel. And then the 14 is going to have more pop, meaning it's going to bounce off of it more. I mean, that's the same way with pretty much any paddle brand. Like you go with Engage, they have the thinner paddle lines, which allows you to hit faster. I mean, you go with the Paddle Tech, the thinner is going to have that faster return off of the face. That's true of honeycomb paddles. However, now that we're in this world of foam paddles, especially multi-density composites of different foams, that like rationale kind of gets upended. And it's very intriguing that RPM goes with this 2 foam thickness like model. So why not just come up with 1 thickness, right? You have 2 shapes, the standard, the elongated, and then why two thicknesses? And I think that is like, they didn't have to do that, right? They could have just come out with 1 thickness for the paddle and basically just come out with 2 different models completely of the paddle. And that would have made sense as well, right? But I think they wanted to keep everything within the same product line. And so they released the RPM Q2, which basically was in line with what they had for the Friction Pros. So all the same models that you can get with the RPM Friction Pro, you can also get with the Q2. All right, so we've got the 16, then there's 14 as well. So which one should you get? All right, so like I kind of mentioned, it got upended. So usually, like, the 14 is not as poppy, or is usually the 14 is more poppy, but actually when comparing these two side by side, the 16 is actually a poppier than the 14, right? So if you're looking at like a Yola Pro 4 like Scorpius, I use that for a bit. Usually like the Colin Johns model is a little bit more plush versus the Anna Bright model, which is the 14 millimeter. That one is a little bit harder to control, a little less stable, has more pop. But I felt like the 14 had a lot less pop than the 16. So this one I say was comparable to the Friction Pro 14 with a tad more pop, and then the 16 millimeter was like more poppy, and that was true also of the elongated Q2s. So if you're looking at which one to get, right, if you need more pop, more power, go with the 16. So this kind of changes your mental model of, well, which one am I used to using and which one should I use going forward? So I would recommend, I mean, you could try both of them if you had the chance, but the 14s have been pretty nice. So if you don't want the like added pop, I would actually go with the 14 of the two. The 16 had more than before. So overall, they play very well, right? It's very forgiving along the sides, and I started tuning it up a little bit with some weights. So added some extra weights here, and I think it does respond pretty well to the weights, especially when you're at the net. So it hit very well for that. I feel like I'm will probably add up a little bit more for getting more power at the baseline, but it had plenty of power at the net, especially with the pop. So that's my take of the RPM. So conclusion, I would say if you really like the Luzz Inferno and wanted a hybrid shape that played kind of similar profile, like power, feel, with little different aspects, probably a little bit more feel. Definitely check out the RPM Q2. If you like the Boomstik, but wanted a lower weight paddle that has high pop as well, check out the Q2. If you want a Friction Pro that has a very similar feel, but with a lifetime warranty, and you're not going to core crush and break, I would say check this out as well. Like I say, those are the most comparable paddle sim, or probably the Pro 4 as well. But and then all the other paddles I got here, they kind of have like a different like feel attribute to them that is kind of a little bit different. So if you're used to kind of this stack of paddles and you know how they feel, you're gonna kind of be somewhat similar with the Q2. So kind of know what to expect there. So with that, that's kind of my overall review. Check out discount codes, and I'll hopefully try to get James and Marwan back on to talk about the upcoming Q3 and the hybrid paddles they got. All right, see you guys next time.